Okay, so we'll compare. There's the dish, which actually looks quite elegant, I think, you know, and the fish cooked this way is wonderful. Now we're comparing this with a piece of fish and halibut with a parsley sauce made with a roux in the French style and some French fries on the side, and, you know, it's quite standard, and the same vegetables, so as to give it a good shot. Okay, now, here is the number. 877 for the classic, 363 for our little one. Fat was 51 grams of fat, which is almost really enough for one complete day, at least certainly for Trina. 2 in this case, really good stuff. Saturated fat from 27 down to 1. Percentage of calories from fat at 52%, that's down to only 6% of calories from fat. Now you know why people say eat a little fish. Cholesterol, 74, and sodium, 273, not bad at all. Dietary fiber, 7, which is jolly D, just up just a little bit. Okay, so very tender, perfectly cooked, and just a little bit of that sauce with there. And let's see. Oh, that's so good. Try that. One element, one pot, just for 2 people. Not bad. Okay. Done it a fat. Thanks for being with me. God bless you. Look forward to seeing you next time. Bye. Welcome to Graham Kerr's Kitchen. It's really 2 programs in 1. This is a series that appeals to your creative side. Food that is sumptuous stuff. How could that be? This is a program about people who want to eat healthy and reduce calories. Actually, it's about food with an aromatic quality that fills the nose. Oh, sure. But it's also about keeping my arteries clean by reducing fat. But it doesn't mean a thing if the food isn't rich and colorful. Maximize the flavor. Okay, but I must have healthy food that I can cook in minutes. I must minimize the risk. So welcome to Graham Kerr's Kitchen, where we get our heads together just for you. Hey, welcome back. Well, today, just the same as normal, what I'm going to do with all that stuff that you've just seen is to actually have a basic technique here, first of all, just in the first part, and then go on to that and do another dish, which is what I call springboarding. You know, some way of taking a basic concept and then bouncing on it and doing your own thing with the idea. So I think perhaps to look at this from this point of view, first of all, is kind of interesting. There is a way in which you get particles of fat which are sort of combined or married together with particles of flour, and when that happens, it's called altogether a roux in French parlance. And so you combine the 2 together, and when you actually combine them properly, what you get is 6 times the amount of water or liquid can go into this and be supported by that mix. Well, that's fine, and it tastes wonderful. Come on, I know it does. But if you're in the business of actually withdrawing a bit from fat, that becomes a bit of a problem. So we have to look at ways of actually thickening things without having to have so much fat around. So today, that's what it's all about. And the first time, it will be that simple little technique. It's just using pure starches instead of flour. And then the next time, we'll do a bistro dish for you, which is great stuff. Actually, it's one of the nicest dishes I've ever done. Come through. All right, number one, just to sort of throw in a little bit of an extra for you on rice, I've got some boiling water here, and I'm going to put in just 1/8 of a teaspoonful of salt. Have you ever noticed how, you know, people say just 1/8 of this, 1/8 of that, and it's hard to know how to measure things like that? Well, what I do is I've got just a little and I hook them together to say we can go adrift. And I've got a little bit of this salt, and that's 1/8 teaspoon. That's a 1/4 teaspoon. It doesn't go down to 1/8 teaspoon. And that amount of salt in the water is actually enough to bring that rice out of being totally bland. You know, it may not be as much as you'd like, but it is enough to get just that lift. All right, water boils, oh, don't touch that one, it's the wrong one. Water boils, and just stir it around a couple of times, because when it's on a hot, really hot element underneath it, what can happen is the rice sort of says, oh, I don't want to go up in the air, I want to lie here and do my own thing. And it cakes onto the bottom and it can burn. In this way, when you stir it around, it's just fine. Put a lid on the top, gets the heat going quickly, and rings it up. Now, I just want 10 minutes at the boil, and then I'll show you a little technique which goes with that. Okay. This is a large wok with a flat bottom, because this is electric, of course. And it's cast aluminum, so that it actually, or aluminium, hello, and it distributes the heat well. Now, but if you don't have one of these, if you've got a skillet and it's big fat bottom and it's got a fairly large lip to it, then you can use one of those in place. So, okay. And if not, you can use a frying pan and get stuff all over the curve. Here we go. Just 1 teaspoonful of oil on the top, and then because it's vegetables as well, remember that's normal, just 1 other teaspoonful in order to marry it up. Just 2 teaspoons of oil, which is a light olive oil, and a bit of toasted sesame seed oil, about 1/16 part. Okay, this is standard stuff that I normally do. Now you see, this has now come to the boil. The moment that it comes to the boil, take the lid off and let the rice breathe. Good smell there. First of all then, clove of garlic, just a nice fat clove of garlic. That's the bash and chop business. It's got a sharp blade on it so that you can actually bash it and chop it, and that just does fine in a dish. It really does. Then here's an interesting fellow. You know what this is? It's not a gladioli. This is ginger. This is root ginger. And it's a perfectly wonderful specimen here. When they're very young, a root ginger can be almost bronze in color with a very fine, papery skin. And sometimes you can, you know, go through this process that I've done, which is to remove the skin from it altogether. It's not strictly necessary. I need to have 8 paper-thin slices. And then, by the way, this green here is the... This is probably edible. This is the pen that I was marking with. It's just that I'm concerned about it, just in case you thought I had dirty hands. It's not that, it's just me pen. Here we go. And they're in very fine, thin slices, which is called julienne by some people. Tiny little whispers, and it should be whisper because you get a big hunk of that and you really know it. So I'm going to use both of those ingredients at the same time in the oil that's here. This is, by the way, is really doing its thing, isn't it? Turn that down just a little bit, that 10-minute rice. And in goes that. Now, we're going to deal with this later on in the series about baoziang. But this is what's happening now. There is this explosion of fragrance taking place there in the pan. And it shouldn't go on too long, because if it goes on too long, if you look down in that pan now, you see it's beginning to toast. That's long enough. Then put in, I've got 1 green pepper there, which is cut into fairly obvious, interesting size. I always cut, by the way, a red pepper or a green pepper, which of course, as you know, red pepper is really a green pepper that's hung around long enough, and into slices from the inside, not the outside of the pepper. You see, on the outside of a pepper is quite hard, but the inside is nice and soft, and you're unlikely to sort of do yourself damage if you do it that way. Right? So, put that in with that. That's just 8 ounces of pepper. And by the way, I usually mention all the ingredients, so if you've got a piece of paper and a pencil, just write it down. If you don't, there's always the book. All right, so, now you see that? I just gave it a little stir, but you see how that caked in the bottom there? That's just what I don't want. So just just make sure that it's off the bottom of the pan. Marvelous when things like that happen. All right, going well. Here are 8 ounces of snow peas. Now, please don't get the frozen snow peas. They don't do well at all. Wait for them to be fresh. And then just take that little stalk end off the top there. Those can be thrown in after everything's been going for a while. If you've got a couple of wooden spoons, this is fine. I like using these things. They let all the juices flow through the hole. And just keep it going. It's quite a high heat now, medium-high, never anything more than medium-high for me. And that's marvelous smell. Okay, now when it's got to about this point here, just take the vegetables and pop them onto a plate. Now we've got an almost dry pan. But here's some of the toasted sesame oil, just a quarter of a teaspoonful of it. It's unrefined toasted sesame oil, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful flavor. And to this, 12 ounces of a jumbo scallop. Now, I know they're a little bit expensive, but look, there's no skin, no bones, and sometimes you look at the prices of other things and other protein, and you work out how much you actually get to eat. And this is a remarkably good buy. And they're so tender. These are the weather vane scallops from Alaska. They're perfect, and they're just tossed around in there. A little bit of salt, just a touch, and a little pepper. I actually wanted pepper. And whilst those are just cooking there just for a moment or two, look at this. This, I think, after fresh basil or basil, is my favorite herb. Now, what's that? Okay. See, that's a good way of looking at it, like that. That is cilantro. And cilantro is fabulous. With a little thin knife like this, cut it through so that there are discernible chunks of it, not totally fine, but I want actually 2 tablespoons full of it altogether. So I just throw that in on the top and just turn those. You see, they've just browned a little bit, and this it's outrageous. The sesame and the cilantro together. Fabulous. All right, now take the vegetables and whack them back in again. Now, I make a very simple stock. I'll tell you about it later in the program. But I make a very simple stock out of vegetables. And that is it. Just 1 cupful of it. And I usually make quite a large amount of it and then freeze it down and then use it when I want it. Small amount of white wine, just to, well, you know me. It's just a nice thing to do. And then wine, this is where you need to get the heat up. Now, this is where the technique comes in. If you were to serve it like this and you were to pop the scallops back in again, it's thin. It looks nice, but it's thin. And now sometimes in Asian cooking, a whole mess of oil goes on to that. Let me see that I've got that underneath. Good. And I want to try and avoid the oil. So here is the technique. In this, I've got some cornstarch. I have found that arrowroot, which is fine for adding tremendous stuff. I love arrowroot. But when it's put with vegetables, which are like this, which are just crisp as can be, they really don't work. Arrowroot comes off feeling slimy. And this cornstarch can be poured into the top and stirred around. It thickens up almost instantaneously. See how quick that is? Just like that. But it does need about 30 seconds, all right, just to cook out the starch. Because although it's a pure starch, there's this kind of a feeling of starch in there. And you can actually sort of discern it. Oh, that's great. So this is in the 30 seconds. Take a plate, and we can get out some rice, which, by the way, I put into a strainer out of there after 10 minutes, and then just let that sort of make, look how beautiful that rice is. That just has another 5 to 10 minutes in a strainer over some hot water like that. And then all you have to do is just to pull out the perfectly thickened with pure starch stir fry like that. Doesn't it look wonderful? It works every time. Well, now you see, one of the things that happens here is that you get this glistening finish out of it. And it really looks colorful. You've got the color and the plump, just cooked scallops. Scallops should never be cooked so that they go sort of woodeny. You know, they're cooked just to develop a wonderful flavor. Now, did we achieve it? Instead of having the roux, the solid-based roux with the, you know, the 5 tablespoonfuls of flour and the 4 tablespoonfuls of butter and the cream and the cheese and everything else which makes up the dish. Instead of that, we just had a couple of teaspoons full of oil, just a 1/4 teaspoon on top of the sesame oil. So that results in a really intriguing set of numbers, because what you see, right off the top, you get down to 493 calories. And then, after the calories, you watch the fat, okay? So from 31 grams of fat now goes down to 5, and only 1 of those grams of fat is actually saturated, which is very good news. So that results in a total, then, of 9% of calories from fat. Then we get 27 grams of cholesterol and 250 milligrams of sodium, and just down to the end with just 4 grams of fiber, which is just an increase anyway, which is really good stuff. Okay, now, quick little taste here. I adore scallops. Sorry about this one. Yeah. Oh, and the flavor and the basking of that sauce that runs over the top of it. It's so smooth, and you just pick up the flavor of the ginger, and a little bit of the garlic there as well. Ready to go. So, don't forget, springboard. Use the idea, the pure starch, the cornstarch with the fresh vegetables like that one. Okay? Springboard. Oh, I'm going to springboard this time with a classic French dish. This is a sort of bistro dish, and really works. It's terrific. I guess really the first thing about this, boy, the smell, I lifted the lid and the smell is amazing. Aroma, I'm sorry. Here I've got mushrooms, and they're quite small mushrooms, really, about 1 inch across, and try and get them equal sized. And if you're going to clean them at all, clean them with a damp cloth. Don't run them under water, and then use them straight away, because otherwise they get slimy. All right. I've got actually 8 ounces of mushrooms, and I'll show you how to do the rest of the dish in a moment. I just wanted to stir these in whilst I still had about 5-6 minutes for them, just for the mushroom to remain meaty and great, but to just sort of steam through with the rest of those vegetables in there. Fabulous. All right. Now, the onion, which goes into this dish, is a small pickling size onion. Now, all of the vegetables are kept almost the same size. Great classic dishes like this of the people. Usually meant taking the vegetables out of the soil just at the springtime and assembling all these great, gorgeous things from the garden, all at that prime moment of excellence, and assembling them together. That's why the sort of presentation is so important. So I simply take those and cut those into quarters. They retain their size, as you can see. And this then is placed with the others. There are about 6 of those onions altogether. And then here, place 1 teaspoonful of oil into the pan. Wind the pan up medium-high, no higher than that. And then just drop the onions in there, and they can start to sizzle just a little. Have you noticed in the markets nowadays, I hope where you are, that this is happening, little tiny truncated carrots? They're called French carrots. What I do with these is just to cut those in half. To expose the surface of the inside to be able to absorb some of the flavors that we're going to create around this one. Really good. So with this one, I've got 20 of the small carrots. And what's so nice about them is they're so sweet. They've got a lovely, sweet, tender quality. I know we've sort of fixated by things that are long, you know, great big carrots. My, look at that carrot, you know, it's 12 inches long. Well, I'm not sure that that just naturally feels that the carrot is the best carrot that you can buy. All right, there it is. And now small new potatoes, the little red skin new potatoes, so nice, again, that come just out in the spring. And I suppose all the year round now, you know, you get everything from some place that get blown in. These are about 6 of those potatoes. I didn't want too much starch in the dish. And start stirring those in as well. The onions are releasing that natural volatile oil now, and the rest of the vegetables are just doing nicely, just being able to simmer gently. Okay, there's a herb which is absolutely vital, or herb if you will, absolutely vital in this dish, and it's called rosemary. And rosemary is absolutely magnificent. I would take about 4 inches of rosemary. It came like this, so I'm having to put 2 branches in. But just settle those down in the dish. Wherever rosemary grows in abundance, the woman is in charge of the house. So you might like to plant some and tell Dad about it. Or on the other hand, be like me, and I nip out at night time and kill the stuff. So stir it around, and then just liberally douse it with 2 cups full of vegetable stock. Now, vegetable stock is dead easy, truly dead easy. You've just put a little oil in the bottom of the pan, get some garlic and some fresh root ginger, some leek and turnip, onion and celery and carrot, a bit of parsley. And just simmer that away in a pan and strain it. It takes about half an hour. I usually do a great big batch and then freeze some in a pouch bag and stick it in the fridge with a, you know, mark it, make sure everybody knows what it is. Now, when you lift the lid, you will immediately sense this tremendously exciting aroma of the, you know, rosemary. And I've got here some arrowroot. Now, in the first program, or first part of the program, I actually used cornstarch, okay, because of the vegetables, and the vegetables were crisp. Where vegetables are crisp, you simply cannot use arrowroot because it goes slimy. I don't know any other way of describing it but slimy. But in this case, the vegetables are cooked. Now, move them to one side and then pour this, what is called a slurry, of the arrowroot. Now, you notice the arrowroot goes so quickly. Do you notice how quickly that has actually thickened? Now, you can pour that 2 tablespoonsful, so about a tablespoonful and a half, actually. It's usually, the ratio is 1 tablespoonful of pure starch to 8 ounces of liquid that you want to, oh gosh, this is so great, that you want to thicken. Now, that's what I want. Now, look at how colorful that has become. The thing you should do before you stir it all around is take the rosemary out. I belted all the leaves off the rosemary now, so now you've got little rosemary leaves, and they're too spiky to stay in. So, you know, the first thing is take it out before you start knocking off the little spiky bits. All right, good. There's a couple of other herbs, if you don't mind, herbs that I'd like to put in. One is, first of all, butter beans. These are canned butter beans, or red or lima beans. Unfortunately, manufacturers nowadays are not aware of the fact that we need to have beans whole. I just want to get those down to warm them up. Don't put them in too early, otherwise they'll lose their shape and they'll break up. They actually put in far too much salt, and I'd really like to ask you, please, if you manufacture beans, and even if you don't, tell somebody who does, please let's have one with lower salt content. All right, so that's doing well, and then a little bit, about a half a teaspoonful of thyme, and about a tablespoonful of parsley on the top, and you've done it. Now that really couldn't be easier, could it, actually? Well, I suppose it could, but I mean, I can't think how it could. Then you just simply serve it up. Now look at how it glistens, all right? And There's no stringiness, which there would have been if I had used it in fresh, those raw vegetables. These go wonderfully well. Looks magnificent. The aroma from that is just tremendous, right? So there it is. Now let's have a look at the numbers and show you just how it compares with the one with cheese on it. Because that's the way that it's normally achieved in the classic European style, which is this one here. You'll notice that this one has this gloss and glimmer, and it looks as if it has fat maybe on it, whereas this one does not have the same gloss glimmer, and it has a lot of cheese on the top. So it's very attractive and very pleasant dish, but it's not quite the same. Let me show you how they actually compare numbers-wise. Mine goes up a bit in terms of calories, but don't always worry about that because it's the next number that makes the difference, you see. 24 grams versus 3, and only one of which is saturated, which means I get that whole dish with only 6% of calories from fat, which is really neat, with no cholesterol in it. But 533, that's the sodium content because of those butter beans. You might like to actually do your own beans. By the way, notice what a wonderful increase in fiber there is there. That's just a great thing and shows you how if you get into fresh vegetables and beans as well, what a magnificent, true, genuine delight it all is. Please do that one. You'll minimize risk and maximize flavor like nothing you've done perhaps in your whole life. God bless you. See you next time. Okay? Welcome to Graham Kerr's Kitchen. It's really 2 programs in 1. This is a series that appeals to your creative side. Food that is sumptuous stuff. How could that be? This is a program about people who want to eat healthy and reduce calories. Actually, it's about food with an aromatic quality that fills the nose. Oh, sure. But it's also about keeping my arteries clean by reducing fat. But it doesn't mean a thing if the food isn't rich and colorful. Maximize the flavor. Okay, but I must have healthy food that I can cook in minutes. I must minimize the risk. So welcome to Graham Kerr's Kitchen, where we get our heads together just for you. I really do hope that we're getting our heads together. Welcome, by the way. One of the things I just need to get popped into an oven, first of all, at 450 degrees. I'm sorry if you've got your pencil and you're getting it ready for later on. 450 degrees Fahrenheit for just 10 minutes. I needed to do that first. Come on through. What I really want to do here is to show you a technique today, which is as pastry. And I'm, as you can probably tell by my accent, I was raised at the other side of the pond, from whichever side you're at the moment. Of course, it would depend. I'm British. I'm Scottish, actually. My father's Scottish, my mother's English, and inadvertently I was born in London from my Scottish side of my family. Now, you can have a pie in Britain, and a real pie, of course, has a layer of fatty crust in the dish, first of all, and then, of course, the top crust on the top there. Now, the big thing is, when you start looking at the amount of fat and flour just combined together, and you want to try and get something which is low in risk and high in flavor, Gosh, that's difficult. It really is. So what I've tried to do with this particular one is to start eliminating some of the quantity for a start. And so we simply cut out the bottom part. And then, of course, my country folk will say, but that's not a pie. And I understand that. But I want you to bear with me just at the moment and then investigate the numbers and feel with me this idea about trying to minimize some of the risk and maximize the flavors. It's with wheat germ in it, has a marvelous toasty kind of experience. And so let's rush off and join the crust at the moment. I'll show you how the rest gets together. Come along. Good. If great big clouds of smoke come out of the oven, ring the station. It's a bit late by then. Okay. First things first. Cup and a half of flour. And this is an all-purpose flour. And this is a most important way to begin. Into that, a quarter of a cup of wheat germ. Now, in this particular case, we use wheat germ which is toasted. But you can use raw wheat germ, but here's a problem with it. Although it is nutritionally excellent, it does have a high oil content. And the higher the oil content comes, the more likely you are for it to go rancid. And rancid oils and fats are not such a good idea nowadays when we're starting to learn something about cancer. So please, if you're going to get wheat germ, get it at the last conceivable moment, or keep it in the deep freeze, or buy it toasted and then keep it in the fridge. All right. And use it fairly soon. Right, now, the wheat germ is now into the flour. And here, then, I've got 6 tablespoons full of butter. Not butter. I thought you just fell off the sofa for a moment. No, this is a polyunsaturated margarine, and I put it in the refrigerator so that, in the deep freeze, so it would get really cold before cutting it. And if you cut it in very thin slices like this, and then cut it again in little tiny pieces like that, and put it immediately into iced water, you'll have something that looks like so. And this is important because the reason for this is that this should be as solid a fat as possible when you rain it down into the flour. Because actually, the making of a piece of pastry which has flakes and tenderness in it, tender and flaky. Now, if you just think about that, that's not exactly the description of a desirable personality, but it certainly is a desirable pastry. So, oh, I didn't need a piece of ice in there. That might have been the start of an incredible new recipe. All right. So just place it down. I call this 5-minute puff pastry, so we'll see whether we can do it in 5 minutes. Then, this is finger time. Just toss it around so that every piece is covered in flour. Now, I don't know whether you've ever heard that a person who is sort of warm-blooded can't make pastry. They say that. That's because they've got sweaty hands. I'm not sure. Maybe from your experience, you know, warm-blooded people always have sweaty hands. I mean, my wife Trina's warm-blooded, but she doesn't have sweaty hands. But if you do, you're apparently not supposed to make pastry. That's ridiculous. Look, just simply take your fingers there and just press each one of those pieces of fat out until it's like one of those stones you'd find on a beach that you say, ooh, look, let me skip that one, you know, because we're going a long way. So you want to flatten it out so that it once was nice and round and pieced, and now you're flattening it out. You see, the point is that the more you handle an all-purpose flour, then it starts to build a gluten chain in it. And the more gluten you get, the tougher something becomes. So, and especially when you add water to it. So, I want to handle it minimal. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and possibly 6. We'll see. It depends upon the humidity in the air and just to what extent the flour has reacted to that. Everything, I mean, everything changes. And so be ready just with a little extra if you have to have it. Pinch it together. Don't overwork it. I will need that extra bit. And just slosh it in. Really ice cold. Very important. All right, now, about this time, you can start to compress it together. It should be able to come together with the fingertips, and this is the... Whenever I do this on camera, I think, oh golly, is it going to work? And, of course, hope rises constantly in the human breast. Ah, good. Now, just keep on just pressing it down, remembering if you overdo it, you're going to be in trouble. There we go. All right, little bits everywhere. Make sure it's all together. Now, just compress it together in your hands and just move it into a ball shape. The moment that it gets wet, just please don't overdo the wetness of it. It may look a little dry, that's fine. Then by all means do it. But please, please don't overdo the wetness. Now, when you start rolling it out, the first rollout will be nice and easy. You don't roll it too far. You just get it out to a shape, say about that. And then you fold it in halfway, and then over the top halfway, and then turn it like so. Now you're starting to get it into a shape that you can start to work with. A little bit more of the flour. That's why if you got, and you know, I can't stress this more, too much. Just keep it, because I've got so little fat in here. Just 3 ounces of fat, you know, the 6 tablespoons full of fat. It's incredibly low in fat, so you've got to treat it so carefully. Over and over, and then you could mark it twice, you know, for the fact that you've actually rolled it. Then you could put it in the fridge and let it relax for a little bit. Bring it out once again, and then roll it out for the last time, just the state that you want it in. Now, if you've got a rolling pin, the thing to do is to get a rolling pin that has got handles on it. I feel that that is probably the better kind of rolling pin, so that you've got something to hang on to as you're simply going through. This is... Come on out! I don't want to keep on handling you. The more I handle you, the tougher you're going to get. That's right, buddy. Oh, well. Do you ever talk to the things that you do in the kitchen? There we go. All right. So you just roll it out until it's about 1/8 of an inch thick. Now you see the kind of dappled look that it has. It has a wonderful appearance. Put a lid on the top, and then simply inscribe a circle around there, making sure you get your fingers out of the way. Blood makes terrible pastry. And bring it out. Then mark it. And what I do, I mark this across there like so, into the divisions that I need for the pastry itself, all right? For, you know, however many portions I'm going to use. And then roll it around a rolling pin, and then straight out onto a waxed or parchment paper like so. And then take a little bit of milk and just brush it on the top. 2% milk is probably better than skim milk in this case. So little, it doesn't make any difference. All right, put that into the oven. Remember, like we did with the 450-degree Fahrenheit one? And lo and behold, bingo! There's the one. Oh, the smell. When you bring it out of the oven, this is the reward of rewards when you whip it out of the oven here. And it comes out and it looks like a sort of shallow pizza. But the smell is just gorgeous. Now, here's the point where my country folk, hello, are going to say, Graham, that is not a pie. And so I keep on making the point there about that, because I know it isn't. So taking a good steak and kidney or whatever you're going to, whatever kind of pie filling you want to do, take that, place it out, and then simply break off. Boy, that's hot. You see that's why I actually did it like so that you just break it off and press it down into the mix like this. And you know, it soaks up a little bit underneath so that the juices actually get underneath, but I don't have that bottom crust to go absolutely white and soggy in the bottom. All right. Well, here, let me show you what the actual difference is when you look at a pastry crust actually top and bottom. So there it is. And I thought I'd compare this with a steak and kidney pie, and this is what I was trying to do, remember, at the top, was just to see whether I could get a crust on the top instead of the bottom as well, and see that difference that would make. So I thought it would probably be a good idea not to actually write the numbers down for anything else except the pastry involvement in the same shaped pie. So 348 calories for a classic crust on a steak and kidney pie. We get that down to 176, so it starts to bring the calories into line. Then 21 grams of fat. That's a third of the amount of fat that you probably would need in a whole day if you were my size. So we brought that down to 9, so that makes it more manageable. Saturated fat was 13 because of butter actually makes a wonderful crust, and so does lard. We got that down to just 2, which is reducing the risk factor. And so that gives me a crust at 47% of calories from fat. Remember, that's the crust only, and then you have to deal with the filling. That's where it can come down to 30% or less. And then cholesterol, 123, 0. I love it when it gets to 0. And then sodium is just 5 milligrams. I mean, that's really down. And then dietary fiber, it knocks out about the same with the dietary fiber here. And then clean your hands before you start to eat. I don't have a moment point. Oh, now look, see how it breaks? That means that it's tender. And it soaked up the meat juices from underneath. The toasted wheat germ is an extraordinary flavor. I do want you to try that. It's tender, light, delicious, flaky, and under half of the risk of the other one. Okay? Very good. Okay. Springboard. Now, must springboard, always springboard. I'm going to springboard this time by inventing a completely new dish. It's really a layer of rice and corn and fresh salmon in a bowl, in a clay bowl. And you don't want to miss this one. Come on, I'll show you how it's done. Right, now this one is totally unique. I don't know any other dish anywhere like it in the whole world. So here we go. Take 1 cup of sweet corn, which is the frozen sweet corn, and you've actually defrosted it, and take 1 cup of a Chardonnay, de-alkalized Chardonnay, and just whack it in there, bring it to the boil, and it's just almost at the boil there now, and then ready one of these blenders. So make sure that it's nice and tight at the bottom. I've had more fun than you can imagine with leaky bottoms, if you understand. Okay, so we just simply pour that in there. I prefer glass, and then on with the top, and put it on here. Good. All right, so it's on and ready, and I dial that up to about 6, and then run it, and always take your hand off the top. All right. So it's just bouncing up and down at the present moment. It doesn't take long, just a few moments. And then get one of these, stainless steel mesh sieves. The sort of thing that has been really strung together properly is going to last a lifetime. That's what these do. They're very strong indeed. Get the pan ready to receive it. After it's had about this 30 seconds, then you can just stop it down. And place this, then pour this into, the smell of it. When those kernels break open, and they pop in the blender, you see, when they break, and they mix with the wine, and there's something absolutely extraordinary that goes on between these two as they get together, the wine and the corn. This is for the sauce, by the way, that goes with it. Just great. Just mash it through and just get as much through as possible. You're just left behind with some fibrous material, which is a bit of a shame because we could have used it, but it'll ruin the sauce. Okay, just place that in there. And now, keep it on the heat. And what we're going to do is to thicken that with a little cornstarch, because you see later on, I want to actually, and I need to have some water from someplace. Oh no, I'm going to add some wine to that, not water. I like running backwards and forwards over there just to see whether Terry, who's right behind this camera here, you don't know him personally, but just wag your camera to say you're there, Terry. That's all right. That's him. That's him. You see, just I just wanted to be sure. I can't really see him, so I mean, all I can see is you. Okay, so here I just take 2 teaspoonfuls of the cornstarch. Never arrowroot, because if you do that, it turns it slimy, because there's something about arrowroot and yogurt which doesn't work well. So pull it away from the fire with this cornstarch, having melted that down, and just put it back on the heat again. It must boil for about 30 seconds to get some of that ugly starch feeling, you know, out of that. Okay, so that's doing well, and I just want to bring that to the boil, make sure that comes up. Good. All right, here's the bowl. Now, it's a bowl which measures about 4 inches across. It's got a glaze in the center, and it's just ordinary clay on the outside. And you've probably seen them around. Here, you take just a little bit of polyunsaturated margarine, in this case, just some of the bit left over from making the pastry. And then you make a pastry sheet like the one that we made before. Roll it out about 1/8 of an inch thick. And then just drop it down into the center, like so. Now, this will take a little bit of getting to know how to do, but you've got to make a fold in it, several folds. And so here we go. Press it down loosely into the bottom. There we go, like so. And I found that about 3 folds usually does it. 1 fold there. Here's a second fold. Let's just fold it over there. And here's a 3rd fold around this side. It's kind of, I learned this from a plastic surgeon. Terrible. All right, press it in. Now, just quickly pinch it together like so. And the more tightly you pinch it, you should be able to then tear it back down and then heal it by simply placing your finger on there. Do you see how that worked? So you just pinch it tightly, and this has got fairly dry standing out in the lights, but pinch it tightly, pull that back like that, and heal it. And the last fold here, major fold. Oh, look, this is wonderful now. Can you get off that for a moment and get it here? See now, see that's thick like custard? Now I just want to pour that into a bowl there, and I'm pinching at the same time, so that it gets nice and cold. Now, I wouldn't normally ask you to do that at all. You wouldn't have to do that at home. Just keep it in the saucepan and just let it go cold whilst you're doing the rest of this. But I have to do that. All right, so just pinch that again and from the outside there and heal it. All right, so I don't want large quantities of extraneous pastry all over the place. I just wanted that. And now I just simply run a knife blade around the outside. You see, if you've got large hunks of pastry in the middle, then you get unevenness in the pastry supplied when you're actually eating it, and it doesn't look too good. Now, this can be rolled out. I've actually rolled out some pastry here so as to approximate what it looks like. Press this down so that any other folds and piece of pastry is actually gone. Good. Now, in this bowl here, a cup of cooked long grain rice, half a cup of the same raw, uncooked but defrosted sweet corn, and half a teaspoonful of fresh snipped dill, or dill weed if you like, if you can't get the fresh snip. Dill weed dried is fine. Just stir that together and put just a little drop of pepper in there as well, freshly ground black pepper. Good. Now, that's well seasoned, and what you do with this is you start this thing off by tossing in half of that rice and then pressing it down thoroughly. I mean, really get it down. Push it down hard. It's very important to tamp it right down. Then you can either get a 7.5-ounce tin of salmon, or you've got this piece of salmon here, which is the fresh, lovely piece, which I think I would prefer. And about 6 ounces there of fresh salmon. Just put a layer of it down. Some more, just a little bit of the dill on the top. And 2 teaspoonfuls of capers on the top of that. I know I'm going fast, but believe me, it's all in the book. And then over the top of that, some of the rest, well, not some of it, all of the rest of that mix, and tamp it down just like I did before. And then just take a small brush and brush it with a little milk along the outside. Take this piece on the top, whack it on the top surface, and press it down hard so that it really makes a good seal. And then cut that one off. This kind of short back and sides routine. Just turn the bowl and just cut with a knife at the same time. Isn't that good? Push that to the side. And then crimp it tightly all the way around. Now this cooks at 350 degrees Fahrenheit and cooks for exactly 50 minutes. And when you've done that, you just put 2 little holes in the top and stick it in the oven, and put in a convection oven so that it goes straight on the top like that. Now, here it is. And when you open the oven, the smell of it is gorgeous. See what happens? You just simply take this, turn it upside down, and then pray. Ooh, look at that. Isn't that wonderful? Now look. I'm going to cut a slice through here, just down through like that, and another slice through like that. Oh. And just remove it, and look into there. Look into there. All right, give me just a moment. I need a bit of magic of television. And now this is what I call magic, you see. What actually took place in that twinkling of an eye, see my eyes are twinkling, was that we took the sauce that was set in there and just added half a cup of strained yogurt to the sauce, and then just poured it hot over the top of the pie there, and then a little dusting of dill and some pepper, and that's just exactly what it looks like. All right, now the classic with which we're going to compare this is a fish pie with the top and bottom crust. This has an all the way around the crust too, and it's got more or less the same kind of vegetable relationship to fish in it. So we can see the effect of what happens just with the crust. Okay, from $5.91 for the classic, you drop virtually down 100 calories. From the fat, however, from 38, that whistles all the way down to 17, and the saturated fat element in it is down to 3. So that gives me the possibility of a 31% calories from fat dish instead of a 58 one. So 25 for cholesterol, which is super, and sodium down to 77, even though the capers were in there, it's not overdone, and then up by 5 in terms of the amount of fibers in it, which really works well. Okay, now I tell you, nothing I have ever seen anywhere relates quite to this dish. You see how the salmon flakes into there, and that sauce, that sweet corn sauce? Oh, oh gosh, if only I wasn't British, I could not tell you what it was like. It's great. Thank you for being with me once again. God bless you. Do try it. Don't forget, Minimax, minimize the risk, maximize the flavor. God bless. See you next time. Welcome to Graham Kerr's Kitchen. It's really 2 programs in 1. This is a series that appeals to your creative side. Food that is sumptuous stuff. How could that be? This is a program about people who want to eat healthy and reduce calories. Actually, it's about food with an aromatic quality that fills the nose. Oh, sure. But it's also about keeping my arteries clean by reducing fat. But it doesn't mean a thing if the food isn't rich and colorful. Maximize the flavor. Okay, but I must have healthy food that I can cook in minutes. I must minimize the risk. So welcome to Graham Kerr's Kitchen, where we get our heads together just for you. Well, indeed, welcome. Look, what we do here is we got a basic technique and then springboard the technique into something special for you as a recipe. Actually, 2 recipes in 1, but come over here and I'll show you how it works. Actually, this time, if I was ever asked, and I am frequently, what is the best food you can ever remember in your whole life. I'd have to say something bathed in a white sauce. And I loved it. I mean, just about anything which is coated in a lovely mouth-round fullness thing. What I mean by mouth-round fullness, it says MRF, is something, if you could think about it in your mouth, it just rolls around your mouth. It's so soft and so, and it carries flavor. And that's usually fat that actually does that. Well, what I want to do is I want to compete with fat by adding aroma and color and texture to a sauce. ACT is rather fun. You can act on the idea. So the aromas are going to come from spices today, from herbs and spices, you'll see. The color is going to be a dense white color, as in the sauce. The texture is going to be this MRF in there. And I'll show you how all of that comes together just in one brief moment. Okay, ready? Let's go. By the way, just in case you should think I have an armful of fat, this will disappear during the program. This was just washing my hands before I start. I wash before I start, and I do the washing up at the end of it. It's just this sort of way of... well, anyway, come on, Kerr, get on with it. This is basic white sauce, and the stocks and things that can be added to it will change according to what you're cooking it with. Okay, so I'm going to make a kind of chickeny sauce at the present moment, so to put over a breast of chicken. Now, first of all, nick out and find a, the brand name doesn't matter, but find a yogurt which has no fat in it, and you read down the ingredients, you say a non-fat milk and pectin, product. So just read the label, and non-fat, and no gelatin, because gelatin, it stops it from being able to strain like this does. So if you've done that, then all you need then is either one of these little things. There are very fine gauze in between a solid plastic container, and that will last and last and last forever. That actually fits one of these 32-ounce containers. So you get one of those, and then put a full cupful of this yogurt, just sort of put it in there like that, and heap it right to the top, and that'll be a full cup. And just pop the lid on the top, just like that. Now, you could, if you don't want to buy one of those little plastic things and you want to give it a go, and you've got a colander or a strainer or something, just get some kitchen paper, absorbent paper, and just dunk it in. It really couldn't be easier than that, could it? And then put a plate on the top and set that strainer or colander into a bowl, and both of those can go in the fridge. It's a good idea to put it in the fridge. The reason I put the cover on the top is in case there's anything like these onions and everything else on the top there, and they're dripping down and the flavors get into it. That's not a good idea. Here's one that I've actually done in advance. When it's done, you see how much I put in before. Well, this is, you think, where's it all gone? Well, where it's gone is that it drips out below. It actually strains during the 5-hour process. You need a minimum of 5 hours. Sometimes I just bung it in overnight. It doesn't matter if it takes longer. In fact, I've left it there for as much as 4 days. It gets very dense then. And this is, you get this strained off. Now, that is whey. And it's got some protein in it. It's largely water, but you could use it for cooking beans, and it reinforces the protein of the bean in some way. Doesn't need to be thrown out. And then you've got this, which is the strained yogurt. Now, you look at it, and it is not like the way you think about yogurt. This is very dense. It's like fresh cheese, it could be called. Now, also, take a spoon and just very gently, don't push it around too much, but very gently smooth it out the little lumps that you'll find. The lumps are where the sugar content, the little bacterium have come along like this, and they sort of surrounded the lactose sugar. And that's what thickens the whole process of it. It turns it acidic. And it's not too acid, this particular one. Okay. Now, here, I'm going to just show you the thing for a chicken stock. Now, let's assume for a moment that you haven't got any chicken stock in the fridge. So, get a can of chicken stock. And I don't like canned chicken stock just as it is. I have to admit it. I think it's got a tinny, nasty taste to it. And so I worked at trying to deal with that. Bits of celery, a bay leaf, couple of cloves, you know, the thing for toothache, and then some black peppercorns, some parsley and some thyme. Fresh thyme or dried thyme can do. Now you can actually tie that up together in a muslin bag and bruise it and stick it in if you like. Or if you haven't got an endless supply of muslin, you can get one of these sort of large tea bag kind of things and just bruise the herbs, put them inside there, and then just dump it in, raise the heat underneath, simmer it for just 30 minutes. Now it's like making tea, really. So at the end, when you've actually made the tea, it looks like this. And then you need a sort of a pair of tongs, perhaps, and just grab a hold of it. You know, it's easy that way. And drop those out. This has now got the most gorgeous aroma to it. Remember that ACT factor? Aroma, color, and texture. So this is the aroma coming up. Now, to give the texture to it, it's going to be something which is really the pure starch. And if you've joined me for the first time, forgive me for this, but you know, you can pick it up later. But I use a pure starch so often in this sort of thing. And in this case, I've got it there already. In this case, I've got 3 tablespoons full of cornstarch, and I put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tablespoons full of a slightly sweet, this is a Gewürztraminer grape, which is slightly sweet grape, de-alkalized wine on top of it. Now, you could use a little cold chicken stock if you don't want to do that. It's just a little extra signature tuning of mine. It's not absolutely essential. Make it up, stir it up until it all dissolves. Take this off the heat always to be able to do it, because otherwise you make dumplings, and then pour that cornstarch into the top. Now, sometimes I use arrowroot in dishes. Never use arrowroot with yogurt. There is a result which is slippery and very unacceptable. It's a very unpleasant flavor and taste. It's not the flavor so much, it's really the texture which is bad. Now, cornstarch needs about 30 seconds to clear the kind of starchy flavor that it has, and that's what's going on here. That's the absolute perfect time to add any kind of seasoning, sort of